Okay, hi guys, and welcome to the show. Another episode of Gentry in a Jiffy. If you're not familiar with this newer format, it's basically where I answer some of your most frequently asked questions in a more concise, well, hopefully more concise manner. Now, I'll quickly do wristwatch check. I'm wearing the little Panther Cub there, my modded SKX. Still besotted, over the moon. I'm not going to bang on about it, but yeah, that's my wristwatch check today. Let's get into it. And by the way, if you have a question, please do post it in the comments below for future episodes, or you can email in like this person has to theurban.gentry@gmail.com, all one word, and I'll leave it there on the screen as well. So this has come in from Ken from Tallahassee, and he says, "Hi TGV, love the channel. Thank you very much. I really enjoy when you talk about affordable vintage watches. It has inspired me to get into automatic and manual wind watches. My question is, how often should I service them? Thank you. Keep up the good work, Ken." Well, excellent question. Actually, I think a few of you asked this. So there's no definitive absolute answer because it really depends on the watch. Some servicing centers or watchmakers say, 4 or 5 years. Others say longer, 10 years. But let's look at the variables at play here. First of all, a watch, you definitely need to service it. That's at some point, right? It's like a car. It needs a tune up, make sure everything's running correctly. Otherwise, if you don't service it, you're gonna end up really damaging the watch in the long term. Obviously, sooner rather than later, but typically I don't really start servicing watches until I see kind of erratic changes in their performance. That's usually the telltale sign. The other thing is that you've got to kind of gauge. If you've just bought a watch, always ask, obviously, when it was last serviced. Then you've got a kind of rough idea. But that's not an absolute definitive answer either. Mainly, it depends on the type of watch and how often you wear it. If you've watched the Gentry episode where I talked about watch winders, if it's just going to be in a watch winder, constantly winding, that's why it's so important to let watches rest. Or if it's a watch that's always on your wrist, then obviously servicing intervals are going to be more frequent. If it's not a watch that you don't wear that often and it sits in a bank safe, obviously pull it out once a month or so just to give it a wind, get it moving. They need some love so the oils don't dry up and all the rest of it. But something like that is probably going to go longer without needing a service, because obviously you're going to have less friction on all those moving parts. And that actually ties into another point. It depends on the style of watch. If it is a very complications heavy watch, then there's going to be more gears, it's going to be more complex, there's going to be more friction, it's going to require more oil. So the more complex the watch is, definitely the more frequently I would say it needs a service. Highly complicated watches like minute repeaters, perpetual calendars, rattrapante, these kind of rattrapante, sorry, I always say it the Italian way. These kinds of watches, a lot of the components are very, very small and therefore more delicate, so obviously they're going to require more servicing or more frequent servicing. Now, a really great question to ask here is, what kind of climate are you in? Now, Ken is from Tallahassee. I presume, I probably butchered the pronunciation, but I presume Tallahassee, Florida. Very humid, wet. Obviously, climate and how you wear the watch is certainly going to factor into it. If it is a diver, for example, and you actually use it in salt water, in water quite often, that's going to need more frequent servicing, because you're going to have to change the gaskets in the crown and on the case back, that kind of thing. If you swim a lot with a watch, you go diving, then definitely you're going to have to go in probably even every few years. Another thing I'd recommend to also remember is that quartz watches need servicing just as much. The gaskets will erode. They will be compromised at some point. That's inevitable. And then the last thing you want is having water get damage in the movement, etc. Another thing to bear in mind, guys, especially, Ken's talking about buying into vintage watches, is sometimes the price can dramatically vary on the availability of parts. I've used Saltzmans for many years. Obviously now I'm going to use Watchbox because I work with them. But it is vitally important to find people that have access to the manufacturer's parts and components, etc., because that's going to affect the price. And also the quality of the service center. Brands are very, very different. Some brands, and comes from talking to watchmakers, are just easier to source parts for and easier to service in general. Omega is a great example. They have excellent availability of parts, and or actually ETA is another one. I've serviced, I think, about 2 or 3 of my ETA, no, even more than that. I think about 4 ETA based pieces, and it's always been very affordable and very easy to do. Something like Vacheron Constantin, they're notorious for difficulty in finding parts, and that is going to drive up the price as well. Bear that in mind, and especially when you're buying, make sure you know when that watch was last serviced. If it's going very, very fast, and it's gaining like, you know, a couple minutes a day, or even more so, and it's getting quite dramatic in that regard, then there's a possibility it could just be magnetized. I've done a video. You can buy a little $10 demagnetizer, do it yourself, and you don't have to spend hundreds sending it in for an overhaul and all the rest of it. Anyway, guys, do share your advice when it comes to servicing watches. What's your opinion? Is there any other tips and tricks to know? Do share that in the comments, and future questions, of course. Anyway, good luck, Ken. I hope that answered your question. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it and found it useful. And as always, guys, I will catch you in the next one. Okay, ciao.
This is a public service reminder for the good gentry. Please follow us on Instagram, join the Facebook UGWC group, and click on the bell to keep notified of new videos. Don't forget to keep it positive, keep it gentry, onwards and upwards. Thank you.